Jake, congratulations. You just hit level 17
Yeah.
with your wizard.
Mm.
Have you thought about what you want to take for your ninth level?
Oh, I wish, no doubt.
Oh, okay. All right. Did you have something in mind? Like, is there a reason for that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are you gonna
So
cast it right now?
yeah, as soon as you're gonna let me,
Yeah,
I
go for it.
wish I was a little bit taller.
Okay. Yeah. You are a little bit taller. You're about 4 inches taller now.
Nice. We're gonna take a long rest.
Uh, okay. All right.
All right. So yeah, I want to get my spell slot back. So next day, wish I was a baller.
Okay. Um, yeah. You okay? You're a baller.
Okay, I want to take another long rest.
Again, you don't. You're gonna wake up
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's just this a string of. I just have this concept I'm trying to develop here.
Okay, all right. Yeah, a long rest goes by. Fine.
Sure. Okay. Cast wish again.
Okay. What do you wish?
I wish I had a girl who looked good. I would call her.
I'm gonna be talking about wizards today on JNJtabletop. Hello, everybody. I'm Josh from JNJtabletop. With me is JNJake _. And today we are going to be continuing our series, doing deep dives into classes. And today we're going to be talking about how to make a wizard that you would really like to play. This is going to be a fun one for me. I'm going to learn a little bit here because I have never made a wizard that I would like to play.
It's time to go to school.
Never played one. Yes, it is time to go to school. I think the School of Divination sounds
my favorite.
fun.
It's my favorite when it comes to this class.
But we're gonna go through all sorts of things in the class of what the class is in general, what they're good at, ways to build the class, subclasses, all that kind of stuff, and inspiration. And it's gonna be a wild ride. So we're glad you're here with us. I guess right off the bat, Jake, what's a wizard? Why would someone want to play a wizard?
Well, a wizard, as the name clearly implies, is an arcane practitioner of magic. And basically, you want to play this if you want to be able to cast spells and do it as well as there is any measurable way to do spells in the game. If you like knowing things, you like learning things, being smart, and then usually having this like air of mystery about yourself, and your character is going to have just this kind of they have this almost like this intellectual aloofness to them. I feel like if you wanted to aim there, this is a really good spot that you could go. And they're different in the way a sorcerer or warlock or any other class really gets their magic, in that they have to achieve this through study. I mean, the Eldritch Knight from the fighters, they're also going to do that too, but it's really just a minor part of what they do. But they would be like mini wizards, or just that gish. But a wizard, everything about it is just about their own study, understanding of how the weave works, how magic works, how they can control and manipulate these arcane forces by it's almost like a formula for them. It's not like something you're born with. It's not like maybe she's born with it like the sorcerer, or just kind of picking things up as they go like the bard. This is a very deliberate class, a very like, I am setting out to learn this thing, and I'm going to stick with it until it works.
It's kind of interesting in comparison to the fighter, because it is very similar to the fighter in that aspect.
Yep. So I call them muscle wizards, Josh.
Yeah, 100%. Battle Master is the muscle wizard. It is cool because people, will tell you that there are no two classes more different than a fighter and a wizard. But I would tell you that
link's right here.
Yeah, exactly. Right at the very beginning is they're a student, and they're training and practicing and studying to become the very best at what they do and to learn and get better.
Yeah. If the fighter's the muscle wizard, they're the martial caster, I guess. It's the way I look at that. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves with some stuff. Just a quick tangent. I love how Doctor Strange, I feel like he's a decent example of a wizard, because there's almost like a martial discipline to the way he does his magic. And I feel like there's a precision there, and I feel like that's probably the thing that separates the wizard the most from like a sorcerer or some of the other arcane casters out there.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent comparison. All right, we know how they get their powers, all that kind of stuff. It is through study and practice and hard work. But what kind of roles can they fill with those powers? I know one that comes to mind right off the bat is going to be utility. Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
we've seen that. I mean, whether it's Mage Hand or
Mage hand alone.
Mage Hand alone is like, there's so much you could do with it.
Yeah.
Um, Tensor's floating disc,
Yeah, just the level 1 spells even
the little guy.
identify.
What are the there's the one where you have your little uh wind servant things, you
Unseen
know,
servant. Yeah.
unseen servant, like
Yeah. Give him a
those
name.
guys
If you're
like
going to do that, like give him a name like Jeeves or something.
also find familiar. There's so much you could do with a
Yes.
familiar. Like familiars are like they it borderline obnoxious where it's just like like the
Yeah,
party,
I
well, like
agree.
maybe the party should go check this out. Don't do that, I'll send my pet rabbit. And like like
It's not like the Monty Python rabbit where he comes up and he like chews off everybody's head. But no, the wizard is going to be really utility is easily a place they shine because they're going to be able to get access to information to help the party prepare for situations so easily. And they have ritual spells. They're a ritual caster, and if they have the spell in their spell book, they don't even have to have it prepared to cast it as a ritual spell. So you're just kind of doing all these extra things for free as long as you have 10 minutes to just plop open your spell book and get your hands dirty a little bit.
that's kind of nice.
It's it's one thing that I love about them. It's actually the very first class that I ever played, but also because of that, when I came to 5th edition, I did the same thing. But that's just one of the very basic things they do with is utility. They also, I think one of the ways that they shine the most is when they are just controlling the battlefield. And that might be putting a group of enemies to sleep at lower levels. You might be locking off a passageway with a web spell so that people can't come after you. They're, I mean, you could drop down a sleet storm. We saw Melly mess up the poor Archmage's study. But you want to just blanket this area so that nobody's going to be able to pursue you or see through you, or just if there's a wizard that's concentrating on a spell, make them do a concentration check because why not? You
Yeah,
know, they're going to really shine here. And a lot of times this is a thinking I should rephrase that because every class has their tactics, but I feel like this is the thinker's thinking class. Like if you want to be able to take out all the extra tools in the tool belt and really manipulate a battle to the way you want it to go and put your teammates in a position to succeed, the wizard is for you.
yeah, and I think the reason why it is the thinking thinkers class is because you have a very finite um, section of resources there. Um, whereas
Yeah, you
like
can't just spam it.
mhm, like a fighter, you could play a fighter very tactically, and you could really think about every specific move that you're going to do. But at the end of the day, your main thing is just attacking and doing your attack, and you can do that as many times as you want. Your maneuvers are going to be ways that um, you could add on to that, and that's a finite resource. But for a wizard, the big things that they want to do, they're only able to do, especially early levels, they're only able to do those big things like a
Yeah.
little bit. So it's you have to be way more intentional playing any sort of caster, but specifically a wizard.
Yeah,
Um,
especially because wizards, I mean, you'll have your cantrips. Make sure you take at least one attack cantrip because
please.
goodness, that would suck to not have firebolt or ray of frost or something in your back pocket. But especially early on, level 1, you have 2 level 1 spell slots.
It's enough.
So that's like, you know what I mean? That's, and you get your stuff back on a long rest. You have arcane recovery, so you're going to get some of that back as time goes on. But yes, being very intentional with what you want to do, and picking your spots is very, very important. And it's one of those things that if you just spam your spells and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we went through a combat and it's 10 a.m. There's no long rest coming until the end of the day, man.
That's where you get into the 15-minute adventuring day that we always hear about.
Yeah, wizards would be the
But
poster children for that.
absolutely. But I think mentioning you just said like picking your specific moment or specific place, that is a perfect tie-in for another thing that wizards are great, which is AoE, which is area of effect damage. So like,
Fireball.
yeah, exactly. Fireball is I mean, obviously there are other options out there. Fireball is the most popular, most common by far.
Yes.
Um,
Wizards of the Coast even admitted, yes, this is overpowered for a level 3 spell. They did that because it's a classic. It's got its roots in the earliest parts of the game. But
mhm.
shoot it with Fireball.
Yep. And that, that's a thing, right? I mean, I don't remember exactly what the range is on it, but it's got a pretty decent area,
It's
and
20-foot
it's what,
radius.
20-foot radius, and how many dice?
8d6 fire damage.
8d6 fire damage, or half as much on a success.
Yeah.
That is that's significant. You could do a lot with that. And again, we're talking about a level 3 spell here, so there are obviously better options there down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But that's some of the stuff you could do as a wizard.
Yeah. And of course, you have some ways you can support your party with spells like haste or slow. There's a lot of stuff. And even as you get up there, a spell like Disintegrate can deal some ridiculous damage to one target. It all depends on, the makeup of your party, what your party's good at, what they might be weak at. You're really going to have options to be able to fill in a lot of gaps and, make up the difference. They're a very fun class to play.
I wouldn't know. I've played wizard on NPCs before. I've just never played a character.
We should definitely have to have a game where, like, I'm playing a fighter on the front line and you're playing a wizard. Just to put the fish out of water and see how it goes.
Yeah. As long as I don't have to start off at level 1.
Level 1 can be rough, I'm not gonna lie.
So now that we have like a base level of what this class is, what it can do, let's talk a little bit about like some of the subclasses here. Which I guess first thing to say about the subclasses is they're not exactly subclasses. It's more of like a school or a focus. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
especially in the original player's handbook. I think calling them subclasses from there might be fair, but all of them are just, you basically pick your major in college, right? Like, School of Divination, which we referenced earlier. That's my favorite. You have each one, evocation, necromancy, abjuration, enchantment. They all are here, and they all have. Uh, they don't affect your spells really. I mean, illusion ever so slightly, but it's more that they just give you some abilities that kind of flavor. It's just more a little bit extra that you can do. So like you could be a divination wizard and take evocation spells, and it's totally fine. They function the same. You just have ways to enhance and you know just kind of have some flavor for your wizard. And I think your subclass is a really good spot where you could find inspiration for how you role play your wizard. I mean, if you're a divination wizard, be a little weird. I feel like Professor Trelawney from Harry Potter is a really good example of just some like a weirdo whacked out.
She's the seeing the future one.
Yeah, she's the one that like has the crystal ball and is always giving Hermione a problem because it's like the
Yep.
one subject she's not good at.
Yep. I like abjuration a lot, and I could see someone who focuses on that, like they really just have a need to like protect people or things or places
Yeah.
or themselves. Um, and I think that could be really fun to dive into, especially because that's not ever something you think of
Yeah,
for
it's a little
a
against
wizard.
type, right?
Yeah, right. For
Usually
whatever
you think
reason.
of like the egotistical, selfish, I will become the most powerful, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of is interesting that you just mentioned Harry Potter there too, because he is, while I would say he's not a wizard, and we'll get into that I guess a little bit later. He doesn't really focus on becoming the most powerful. He wants to protect his friends.
Yeah, if you're talking, I'm assuming you're talking about Harry.
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
completely agree. I think there's a lot of, as with any class, you know, any personality traits and
Stuff peppered in.
motivations. Yeah, you can change, go against type and tell some really fun and interesting stories there. And I think you're right. I think that's what for Harry he felt like someone who was didn't really have his family. His family was taken from him really, and the one he got stuck with kind of sucked. So he made a new family. His family.
Sounds like a D&D party if I've ever heard one.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask when making a character is how did they become this class? Um,
Yes. Always ask that question.
it's a great question to ask because
Yeah.
it's fun to answer, and this is where you really build something out. And
Hmm.
there's so many differences that you could have in here. I know there's a lot of options
Sure.
for wizard as well.
Hmm. I just love hearing what creative people will come up with, just in general, and a wizard one has a lot. I mean, yes, absolutely. Let us know in the comment section some creative wizard explanations that you might come across. But since they're, you know, obviously they're an intellectually driven class in general, so there has to be some form of study, some form of reason why they have accumulated this arcane knowledge that lets them wield power. So that's really the focus of this question for wizards. And I think maybe you were self-taught, or you had like one single teacher and you were just like that person's one apprentice. I feel like that could be, it's almost like a Jedi dynamic there
Yeah.
in a way. And you know, that perhaps this teacher's teaching you more than just magic and teaching you like, listen, this is why you use your magic too.
Hmm.
Maybe this was a exiled teacher from a school, you know, that's trying to change the world because he saw corruption and wants to instill these lessons into you, and instead of just teaching you magic. I feel like that could be a very fun thing to go there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I love the just the again I keep talking about the fighter video, but like just the back and forth between this and fighter is like
It's amazing the similarities, actually.
yeah, right. With at least how they came to be, right? Because I can see that perfectly. Like the same way you have a fighter who just had that one master that showed them the way, showed them how to fight. That you have that one person who's teaching you and showing you this does that, this motion, whatever, this that and the other thing, and the intense practice that could do that. But I could also see again, this is one we didn't even have on the list, but I'm thinking back to the fighter video of you're the best in your town, right? Maybe you knew prestidigitation and like you would just impress all your friends with that kind of stuff, but then you all right, well, how do I move from there? Maybe that's how this guy found you, right? Or
Yeah.
the master found you. You just knew these little tiny tricks and things and you know pulling rabbits out of hats and that kind of stuff and
Yeah.
and
You
make your friends
realize you
disappear.
had potential. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a huge thing here. I like that a lot.
I think my favorite for the wizard would probably, and this might be along the lines of like the self-taught, but I think it's a little different, is just finding a spell book. Like
Mm.
it's not that you like hit the books really hard and like
Oh
really
yeah.
studied and tried to figure things out. And of course there is some of that in there, but you found something that belonged to someone. Maybe they were low level, maybe they were high level, very experienced or not so experienced, but you found their book and just started reading it, and suddenly, like, you know, things started happening, and you were like,
Yeah. You were able to
maybe I
pick it
should,
up.
yeah, like maybe I should keep reading this. And then of
Uh,
course you did the study thing and whatever. But like I think that's such an interesting start to a character, right? Because there's so
oh
much more
yeah.
you could do with that. Like, because after you answer the question, like, all right, this is how I became the class. Well, where then do you go from I found this book? You go, whose book was it?
Yes.
Like,
What were the circumstances in which you found it?
yeah, exactly.
Was it a dead
There's
body that you saw? It? Oh, yeah.
yeah. Was it
I
just the
love it.
book by itself? There's so many more levels to that. And then you could go from there as like, all right, well, the beginning of your class was finding this book. So now instead of hitting the library and trying to learn more, you're like, well, I want to find more.
Yeah,
Like,
for
and
whatever
I think,
reason, you just grabbed it and this is me.
yeah, and I think that could completely change a character's path, just the way that it started like that. So instead of being that like I'm a bookworm, whatever, you're like, well, I'm gonna just see if I can find other books out there because it's expensive copying these down into my notebook.
Yeah, maybe you intentionally seek out other wizards to kill them. That's
There is a very brutal Highlander take on it, but I like it.
there can be only one wizard, and I will steal your book because you possess powers that I want.
Oh man, at that point your book just becomes more of like a binder. You rip the pages out of other people's books and
Yeah,
stick
imagine the
them in there.
emotional attachments. It's like, let me see your spell book. Which one? Like,
Oh my gosh.
it's like I have 15.
You're like a serial killer. You're like
Yeah.
Dexter at that point with the vials of blood, but it's other
Oh my
people's books.
gosh.
Oh man.
So as you can see,
Yeah,
there can
welcome.
be a ton of ways to do this, and I love the found a spell book. Just ask, how did you find the spell book? That's oh yes, do that. That sounds
Yeah.
like a fun
Welcome back to creating villains on
one.
JNJtabletop.
Yeah, wizards. Well, wizards are very often the big bad evil guy.
Yeah.
And just because, well, usually at the end of the wizard road, traditionally wizards are looked at as at the end of the game they're usually your most powerful player or class, because just some of those high level spells are going to do that. And
Mhm.
the old saying goes, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
And like
That's
after you've hit that max level, it's like where do you go from there? Like if your entire being has been I want to learn all this and become like the most powerful, and you've hit the maximum of what you can do, that what's known, now you start going for the unknown. What does that mean?
yes.
That's oftentimes where the villains come in, because they're like, well, what if I bring back Tiamat and then like maybe I'll be able to get more power from her? Like
Yeah. Yeah, that's where you start looking at immortality as a goal. That's where you start looking at as maybe ascending to godhood or some
Mhm.
kind of other greater being in between. There's a lot that you could explore in that way.
Now we have our person. We know what kind of wizard they are. We know how they became that wizard. Um, Now I'm exploring around, and I just want to know like what kind of relationships would be important
Hmm.
to a wizard.
Yep.
Like, what are they? Like, walk into a town. What are they looking for? Do they have any connections in general already that are important to them? Like, is
Hmm.
there some sort of like school or like mages guild that they belong to? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot
I think it's very. I think any class you should be asking what kind of relationships and things are going to be important to them. You referenced the wizarding school. If that's how your character learned magic, you know there is just a whole wealth of significant potential significant relationships that could be there, whether it is a favorite teacher of theirs, a teacher they didn't get along with, maybe there's a rival student, is there a rival guild or another school that could be there. There could be uh a lot of relationships. I feel like with wizards, because they focus so much on if they can achieve something, very often they don't stop to ask if they should try to achieve something. And
Mhm.
that's just going to open up just uh, so many potential conflicts and relationships, whether it's between countries or local authorities, whatever it could be. The experiments are going weird.
Scientists spent so much time trying to figure out if they could. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't ask, should they?
That's exactly right.
I love that. I call that the Jurassic Park, and that's a great.
But that's
It,
the
it,
wizard.
it is. It completely is. So aside from like specific relationships that they might have and that kind of stuff, I could see them valuing like if you go into a town, maybe they're not looking for the guild, maybe you're looking for the library because
Oh, absolutely.
knowledge and just any sort of arcane or magical knowledge is just so important to you that you're just going to go study.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there are like ruins nearby, I could see them being, like any promise of power or knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
or even just a hint of it. Like if there's a
Sure,
magic
history.
store, they'd be like, let me check that out. Like oddities, okay.
Oh yeah.
Identify. Like tech magic, like
Yes. I think curiosity has to be at some point in one of your core values as a
yeah.
wizard. Um, but another thing, they're also the scientist that just needs more money to do their research, so they're probably looking for grants and all that kind of stuff, if you will, because being a wizard is expensive. I mean, I
Yeah.
know the fighter and your paladin are going to be looking to save up their money for their plate mail, but anytime that you come across a spell that you want to copy into your spell book, it's especially once it starts to get up in level, it's expensive. Like it's worth it because now you all of a sudden have just more abilities to pull from. That's definitely one of the big things. And then ego is one of the most central driving forces here too. So you're going to be looking for that prestige. You want to get that spell that's named after your character.
Yeah.
Eh,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean you have like Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion,
mm-hmm.
Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Tensor's Floating Disc. Like there's I feel like that is the height of wizarddom is to
Yeah,
have a well-known spell that people study for years to learn, and your name is attached to it.
it's like a scholastic credit of sorts.
Yeah,
That's just you made your mark on history.
yeah, 100%. That's like, you talk about immortality. Like maybe you want to achieve immortality through, some sort of means, or maybe you just want to create something that will live on longer than you. Like, uh, Steve. So this is a little off topic, but um, Hot Ones. If you don't watch Hot Ones, you should. Steve-O just did an interview on Hot Ones, and he talked about how he considered skateboarding his religion, um, which is a little philosophical and kind of crazy, but that's the reason for that is he said the one thing that people are always trying to do is to continue to live. And the one thing that they're always guaranteed is that they're going to die. So people have kids so that they have something that's going to live on and they'll still be a part of that. And people believe that there is some sort of end game, right? Of like afterlife, heaven, anything, whatever. He said that he made videos that hopefully would live on longer than him. And that's how he would achieve immortality. That's one way of looking at it, but that is like that I could see that being the mindset for you
Yes.
trying to create your spell and make your mark on the world.
It's interesting because if you just picture, say, your prototypical knight or fighter, them having a family isn't that crazy of a thought. Now you substitute knight with a wizard and you're like, yeah, I didn't think that. Right? You just don't, it's not something, it doesn't immediately come to mind, at least.
That yeah, no, I 100%. I really I don't think of wizards with a family at all for whatever reason.
Because this is how they're trying to keep it going.
That's true. And it's funny because like the quote that comes to mind for that is from Gladiator, which would be a fighter quote. What we do in life echoes on into eternity. And I think wizards are very focused on that. Maybe not always, but I think a lot of the time they very much are.
It's ego
Um,
driven, and I think it's just in the core of it is something must last beyond me, or I must last beyond me.
mhm. To give one more unnecessary quote to this, just because I love Red Rising, and you guys know I love Red Rising because you're fans and you watch every week. All we have is that shout into the wind.
I really need them to make the movie because for someone who loves wizards so much, I'm awful at reading.
You could like them, you could appreciate them. Doesn't mean you have to be one.
That's true. That's true. That is the
And
fantasy.
you know what? If it wasn't always like medieval fantasy, I am sure that there would be wizards who studied by hologram
And
and
YouTube
by
videos.
YouTube videos. Exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that the top motivations and things that they value would be some sort of arcane or magical knowledge or gold to fund their expeditions or like you said, just putting more spells on the scrolls,
Hmm.
prestige, absolutely. Um, Other one, I think I kind of hinted at it before, would be mysteries
Yeah.
for me. Like they maybe not all of them, some of them just want to do their thing. They just want to they like being an electricity whatever wizard,
Yes.
and they just want to be the best at that, and they just want like
I figured out.
shocking grasp, lightning bolt, whatever, blah blah blah, and they just keep doing that until
Hmm.
they're the best storm person ever.
Sure.
um, but some of them, probably the one who found their spell book, they're gonna like mysteries, and when they hear
Yeah.
about some sort of old ruin or anything like that, they're gonna be giddy with the thought of finding some sort of magic item or
Hmm.
uncovering some sort of lost secret or finding another book that might have some forgotten spell in there that no one else knows, and they're gonna be the one to use it for the first time and who knows how long. I could see them really being interested in like learning about their enemies and this ties more into inspiration, I guess, than motivation. But like I compare them to like warlocks from Destiny. If you guys ever played Destiny, I know it's a dead game, so you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But as a joke for the OGs, but
Definitely.
but they their whole focus is like study, and they're trying to just learn more about the light or the darkness or their specific enemies so that they could become more powerful, so that they will be better equipped to fight the darkness. Sometimes that comes in the lens of like, all right, I'm just going to learn more about this so that I'll be able to be better at it. And sometimes it's like, this is my enemy, this is who I fight, this is what makes them strong. I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about the hive and about sword logic and about Crota. I'm going to go into Crota's pocket dimension and fight him there so I could see the
Yeah.
Death Singer, hear her song, learn what I could learn from that so that I could weaponize it against them, become ascendant, and like
Yeah.
all these crazy things that you could. And like, this is, I totally see like
They're
wizards
wizards
in
in
this.
that
Yeah,
way. At least they have the wizard
absolutely.
mindset for sure.
Yes.
At the bare
Yeah.
minimum.
I get so excited about that kind of stuff because I'm a lore nerd. They're lore nerds. And sometimes it's just for the sake of knowledge, but sometimes it's for the sake of like, this is a mystery. I need to solve this. I need to go in here. What could I possibly they're gonna leave no stone uncovered. I'm gonna go in and not just read about this
Hmm.
in books. I'm gonna go and
Yeah.
uncover all the secrets. And there's your reason for adventuring.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really like. Like when you talk about motivations for adventure, obviously gold usually is just a means to an end. That's where you just need your supplies. maybe you're going to build a keep somewhere or a wizard's tower, all that kind of stuff. It's just a necessary thing. Gold works for any adventurer. But when it comes to knowledge and mysteries, I like to ask, okay, is there a specific piece of knowledge that your character needs to know? Maybe
Mm,
it's, and I love for anybody, campaign 2 for Critical Role, like at least in the beginning of the game, Caleb is looking, it just feels like he's trying to fix a mistake. So he's trying to learn about time.
mm,
That's something, that's going to drive him all the way to like the end, because it really isn't like a time travel spell, but why wouldn't a wizard try to figure how to mess with time? I know they have time stop as a spell. There's some stuff that's going on there that feels like you can grab on the cusp of some of this stuff. But why do they want to know that? Is there something
mm.
specific? Maybe there's a mystery. Maybe there's a historical event that transpired, and like you referenced the ruin before, that there would be something there, but there is some kind of magical occurrence that happened in this location, and nobody understands it, and I'm going to figure it out. Like
I
that's going to just drive you, because how often, Josh, are we always saying, ask, why is this monster here when you're prepping? Why do I want to know this specific thing? What's personal about it for me? That's where your wizard can get really like very focused in what they're trying to do.
I absolutely love that, and that just brings to mind an example that I hadn't even thought of until now. So there's a show called Full Metal Alchemist, and it's an anime. And Izzy, if you're here, give me a thumbs up because I know that's your favorite show. So here's your shout out. Because I know you love your moment in the spotlight. So.
Not a wizard. Very studious, but a wizard.
um, but the entire show follows these two brothers who essentially they tried to bring their mother back through alchemy, and got everything got screwed up because of it. But now the whole series, they're going through all these crazy things and doing all this stuff because they're trying to find a philosopher's stone, because they heard that's what they could use to essentially fix a mistake that they made. And you have a whole series that's about this, and
Mm.
it's really good. I've never finished it, but it's like it's very highly rated, and I've never met anyone who's watched it and didn't love it. And that's exactly what you just said. Like they're seeking knowledge, they're trying to uncover a mystery, and the reason for that is very personal to them. Their mother died, and they're trying to bring her back.
Yep.
The brother uh, is now essentially an animated piece of armor because he lost his body when they tried to to bring her back. So now they need these resources. They
Such a
need to
good wizard
uncover this
story.
mystery,
Right
right?
there. Just steal that directly. You'll be fine. That'll work just fine for a wizard.
And if you're about to say that's an artificer in the comments, then just artificers they're not one of the classes. It's not real. It's a figment of your imagination.
Are we not going to do one of those videos?
You could do one.
In the comment section, let me know if you want that to be our next video that we do. Say Josh Artificer.
So aside from those two, then what other sorts of inspiration do you think of when you're trying to make a character like this? Like what kind of concepts just come
Yeah,
to mind?
I know. I know a lot of times, like we've talked about, the ego-driven scientist, the doctor, the very studious, or literally like almost every Marvel villain there is. But maybe not necessarily unless you're going for an all evil campaign, but a lot of the things that kind of form some of those backstories for villains when it comes, usually Marvel for some reason, you could draw from a lot, like Doctor Doom, Doc Ock, like almost all the Spider-Man villains. You're
Mad
going to,
thinker.
yeah, the Mad Thinker. That's right. Mad, but yes, there you're going to have, your classic, like, I'm the nerd growing up. Maybe I had this innocent outlook on life, and life kicked me hard, whether that's through being bullied or some kind of other life circumstance. Maybe you were orphaned or um, kidnapped, and now for some reason I feel like maybe like a Theon Greyjoy. Maybe you're like a ward in another kingdom. That could be a noble wizard, you know, but you don't belong to that family, and you just have this resentment.
Maybe you were expelled from your wizard school under false pretenses. You have a mystery to uncover and knowledge that you need because you need to find out who did it, prove your name, prove your prestige,
Yeah,
get back in good standing.
that's a classic story to tell, and that's going to be compelling because then you get to work with your DM about what those relationships are like and why uh what would motivate someone to frame you or to ruin your reputation. I mean, that's definitely something that the DM can end up figuring it out, you know, because that's a
That's questions for your DM for
yeah.
sure.
But yes, do that. Like when they're, I mean, you're trying to climb to the top of some kind of really, it's so funny because they're not, you know, you think of the nerd or you think of the socially lacking in terms of skill people group trying to climb to the top of this social ladder, if you will, or pyramid. It's intellectually driven, but you're gonna form rivals along the way. You're gonna have all these things, and it's just weird and interesting.
Do you mean nerds in school who were bullied and now own multi-billion-dollar tech companies?
The nerd always wins in the end. Well, Josh, there's another concept that I was thinking about, and this is more of an example. I have here Hermione Granger from Harry Potter because she's one of my favorite examples of a wizard because she's so studious. Earlier in the video, you referenced Harry, and you seem to say he might not be a wizard.
Not a wizard. The Harry Potter films, they're fantastic. Really like them. I just actually just watched them for the first time 9 months ago, 8 months ago,
Yeah,
something like
within the
that.
last year for sure.
Yeah. uh, but they're born with those powers, and everyone else is a Muggle.
Hmm.
They're born with an aptitude for magic, and without that, they wouldn't be able to do it. Which,
Hmm.
in D&D terms, makes them sorcerers.
I think that's an extremely valid way to look at it, particularly with Harry, and to contrast him to someone like Hermione. However, I think this is another conversation that you could have with your DM, but I think that kind of discounts a little bit how special the wizard can be in terms of there is a special quality to their intellectual understanding about how magic works and how that can be uh, brought out in them as far as their development. So I think you make a very valid point there, but I also think that that could be something that could be a very interesting point to discuss with your DM. Like just because somebody works hard to learn magic, maybe they don't even have that in them to achieve it. It's like it
Hmm.
takes kind of like a little bit of column A, but a lot of bit of column B in a way.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I feel like you could have a lot of like Jedi parallels there. Like you have the Force, but you have to work at it hard to make it work.
Yeah.
But
You could be force sensitive and good at pod racing, but that doesn't mean you know anything about using the force.
it's true. Pod racing is the litmus test for all Force
Yeah.
sensitivity.
All right. Well, it's like fast reflexes is what I meant by that. But
I understand. I just know how much you love the pod racing scene in episode one.
listen, Phantom Menace is not a terrible movie if you watch with subtitles and skip past the 40 minutes of pod racing.
It really is that long. Oh boy. Do you have any other examples that you want to go over or concepts?
um, honestly, my favorite one that I just can't get past would just be Destiny Warlocks, and I think part of that is because it almost scratches like the Indiana Jones itch for me
Mm-hmm.
of like which obviously I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. My dog is named Henry Jones Jr. Um, and, uh, and when we were talking about Destiny games, my character was named Henry Jones Jr. But just the concept of this character who just deeply cares about the secrets that ancient civilizations have to offer, or and just trying to learn what you can from them, learn something that was lost. I love that. Um, but then also what I kind of mentioned before about like the Destiny Warlocks of like taking a specific enemy and being like, all right, I need to dive deep into this and figure out everything there is to know
Hmm.
about this enemy. And you could get into some cool stuff with that. Like, and you
Oh
could
yeah.
also, you could ask the question why too. Like maybe there was some sort of tragedy in your youth that involved them, or tragedy at any point in your life that involved, an enemy of any specific kind. Um, or just maybe it's just sheer curiosity. That's fine too.
Yeah,
Um,
nothing wrong with that.
and I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do with that, because you can be really intelligent and know all there is to know about that one group. Maybe you know everything there is to know about dragons, right? Um, and maybe you talk to your DM, and dragons are involved in the main campaign, and you're suspecting dragons, whatever. Or maybe you're also a little crazy, and
Yeah.
there's kobolds or something attacking. You're like, dragons, those bastards.
Like Doc Brown comes out of the DeLorean. Marty, there's kobolds coming.
but just like whatever little thing you had, like bandits, a troll under a bridge, ogres. You're like, those dragons are getting crafty.
I see everything is tied to a dragon somehow. Yeah. Yeah, being a little kooky. This could be fun to for characters that are so intelligent, because that's where everything comes from for them. Being a little off in some ways can be very fun. But
Right.
I love the Destiny Warlock example that you brought up for a couple of reasons, because you normally don't look at, I mean, Warlocks in a way are almost like a space wizard cowboy too. Like, I mean, I guess a hunter might be a little more on the cowboy side. However, but they're on the front lines actively exploring, and you don't often, active is not a word I would normally associate with a wizard, but I think it's interesting, just like with the fighter video, there are ways to connect almost any background or backstory to an adventuring wizard. And that's really what this is about, is you want to try and find an inspiration for why your wizard is going to go adventure. I think I love when we talk about the concepts, because I get excited. I like that.
Concepts are pretty much always my favorite conversation. Um, we should do a video just about concepts of concepts. That's meta.
I was just about to say that's meta. I know it, Josh. I know what meta is. I'm just having fun with everybody this whole time. Which is
um,
totally meta.
last thing that you should be thinking about when you're making any character, but specifically a wizard this time, is what kind of questions should you ask your DM? Like, is there anything
Hmm.
that just comes to mind, like in your session
Yeah.
zero, or just when you're just thinking up a character in your mind space? Um, the most obvious question: how common is
Yeah.
magic in this game or campaign setting?
Yeah.
Because if you are exploring in the Forgotten Realms, totally different than exploring in I was gonna say Theros, but that's not what I'm going for. Ferelden, maybe? I'm
Oh,
talking about Dragon Age,
for
but
Thanos is the thing.
Thedas,
Is where
yes.
you. Yep. I understand where the wires. Yep.
Um, and that of course is a world where magic is very restricted by the chantry, and like everything is done
Mm-hmm.
through the Mages Guild, and if you're not part of the circle, then you're an apostate and you get hunted down by Templars and all this stuff. That's something you want to know before you
Yeah.
start the
That
game.
sounds significant to me. Absolutely. Because yes, is an organization or nation of some kind regulating magic, and are you some kind of an outlaw because of that?
Mhm.
There's your criminal wizard. There you go. You know,
Yeah.
there's ways to find that, and knowing how common it is. Like, are you going to be drawing a ton of attention to yourself just by casting prestidigitation, or using Mage Hand to pick up your beer from across the tavern? um, One thing I always felt was something that kind of gets glossed over a little bit as to how they gain spells, at least in 5e, is you starting off, you get your 6 spells, but then every level you get 2 that you can put in your spell book. I want to know what that's gonna look like, and I want to talk to my DM about that. Like, is there an organization like a wizarding school that, like, are they just like giving this to you as it's like airmailed to you as you're on your adventure, or is it just like, is this like a result of just studying during your long rests and things, and oh, I figured it out as I leveled up? I feel like that probably is how that should kind of work. I think I just wanted that explained a little bit more to me, but depending on how rare magic is in your game, that's a very significant point, I think,
Hmm.
to talk to your DM about.
I think that it should be just like studying that kind of stuff, just because like
I think that's the
it
most
is
fair.
consistent. But I would love, I would love to play in a game where the only time you get something new is if you find it, or if you spend some time in the circle or the school or whatever, and
Yeah.
that's when you get it. Like, sure, you could level up, take your hit die.
You get your spell
Yeah.
slots. You're more
If yeah,
powerful.
yeah. But if all you're doing is just exploring in the woods, you're not spending a day like reading books, then
Mm,
you're not going to actually learn the new one.
yeah. And that's, another thing to tie into, if you do belong to an organization, is there any kind of like upkeep or like prerequisites for staying with the organization? Like, is everybody just required to check in with them and bring the new knowledge they found back so that it can be
Hmm.
shared? Like, is that how that works? I think that's like, what kind of a role is that relationship going to play, in terms of the game for my wizard?
I think a couple other questions you could ask that might not, definitely not going to be important at early levels, but it's never too early to start a conversation about something like that. So just if you have any interest in maybe creating your own spells, that kind of thing, talk to your DM about that. Maybe you want to make like magic items, that kind of thing. Talk to your DM about what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely just start just opening up the lanes of conversation, just so that they're not completely caught off guard when suddenly you just start gathering materials and like
Just
then
show
you're
up.
like,
I made this new spell. I put it in my spell book. Like,
I shared it with you on D&D Beyond. You feel free to use it.
right? Yes. No, that's the kind of conversation. So a lot of DMs are, they're comfortable being in the DM seat, but they might not be comfortable with understanding all the mechanics and how, like, I don't even know what level I would call this, put this spell at, or anything like that. You don't want to put them on the spot. So
Hmm.
open that dialogue a little early is
Yeah.
a good thing to do. And then, of course, just like with our intro, like Josh and I always say, we think we're funny. The wish spell. That's one of the most open-ended spells or features in the game. So, I mean, typically, I would say probably the most common level to start at is probably 3. But if you're so there's time. But if you're starting at a high-powered game, maybe it's a one-shot, be like, and you have access to wish, just talk to your TM about that. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm thinking about doing this. How do you feel about that? Do you want me to just avoid it? Like,
Hmm. Yeah. Are there certain parameters they're going to set in place for Wish? Like, because Wish, I mean, you could pretty much do whatever you want with it. I know if you're playing with a DM like Nooch, he's probably gonna, it's gonna be like the Wish contract type thing where like you have your lawyers write up something that it is very specific and
yeah,
cannot be confused at all. um
yeah.
is it going to be like that? Is it going to be like, okay, well, there's a couple other things you could use it for, but I would prefer you to use it for the being able to essentially use wish as like any other
A
cast
lower
down
level
spell
spell.
slot. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. um just
which
it's
that alone is.
it's huge. Yeah.
I have every spell in the game because of this.
uh, yeah, it's definitely something. It's never too soon to have a conversation about that because your DM starts thinking about it early. Maybe they say no at first, but if you're starting at level 3 and you go to level 20, they have plenty of time to change their mind.
And
um,
DMs, if someone comes to you and talks to you about what they can do with their wish spell, tell them don't be a jerk with it, especially to other players and their characters in the game, because if you do, I will punish you. And I think it's very safe to, if you sense that coming, give them that warning. Because as a DM, if they were going to be a jerk with it, I would say just get ready,
yep.
because I'll drop the hammer, and I'm the DM. I'll win.
The last thing that I would want to ask a DM if I was playing a wizard is there any circumstance in which if this is the build I'm going for, would I be able to create a golem? If I find the manual,
Mm,
all that kind of stuff, would I be able to do
yeah.
that? And then if I'm getting, really powerful
No,
and maybe I'm human,
Josh,
starting to
no.
get kind of old, not going to live forever.
No, don't do
Unless,
this.
what about becoming a lich?
Oh,
Um,
definitely something to talk to your DM about if you're going there.
I mean, that's something that I doubt most people would have decided from level 1. But if your character seems to be going in that specific way of you just constantly power, power, power,
Yeah,
whatever, and you know that it's never going to be enough, talk to your DM because like that could be even at like level 7 or level 10, like that could be a cool and interesting thing to start just like
just start planting those
peppering.
seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Of the yeah, your Tom Riddle asking just the
Whew.
questions of like, how could I do this?
This is purely academic,
Uh,
right?
yeah. Has everyone ever used 9 of them? 7 of them?
7. It's like, I have an entire bookshelf of other people's spell books. That wizard's probably going for that for lichdom at some point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think we had some great options in there for some really cool wizards that you could make and a lot of reasons as to why you'd want to play one. I've never played one before. I don't have any wizard stories. But if you do, I would love to hear about them. I'd love to hear about some of your favorite characters or just concepts that you have in your mind. Um, just drop those down in the comments below, and we would love to talk about them. And we will always respond. So drop us a comment and let us know what you would like to hear about next. Uh, Nia, thank you for suggesting wizards. That's the reason that we did this one. And the last one Izzy suggested, which is the reason we did that one.
Mm-hmm.
Izzy actually suggested this whole series. So
She did. Actually, a really fun series so far.
yeah, yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so if you're enjoying this and you have concepts or anything crazy, let us know in the comments. And if you want to see what we're working on next, just hit the subscribe button and smash the crap out of that bell if you want to be notified when we have other stuff going on. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Yeah, I can do it.
Hello.
Oh, hello. My name is Josh from JNJtabletop.
Yes.
Meadow.
Hello. It's like the
Pixar
most.
blood.
It's like the most wonderful word.
Yeah. Hello.
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 Hi. How are you?
It's a good one. Um,
Hi, neighbor. Won't you be my neighbor?
he's too young for that.
Hmm. Is anyone too young for that?
No, because they made Daniel Tiger, which is it's the same thing, but
Ah, but I'm too old for that.
yeah,
So
but Daniel Tiger is literally Mr. Rogers, but it's a cartoon tiger version of it. Same thing. They use the same song.
he's like a kid wizard.
What? Who is? Mr. Rogers.
And his apprentice Daniel. Or are you not familiar with where I was headed with that, Josh?
I'm not familiar with where you're headed with that. I was not a Mr. Rogers person. My brother was. I don't know if my sister was. I was not.
Kids these days.